Hello, I am Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and I am sitting here with the star of two amazing projects recently, Paul Bettany of Uncle Frank, the film on Amazon, and limited series WandaVision on Disney Plus. Uh, Paul, for Uncle Frank, Alan Ball wrote and directed that film, and he always kind of loosely takes things from his own life. His projects are very personal to him. So I'm wondering, did he give you any sort of tidbits about his own life for you to play or consider when you were making that movie?
Um, well, yeah, not really, actually. I mean, I know that it was sort of, it's more sort of loosely based uh, on his family in terms of the sort of mood of his family and the kind of feel of them all together and and how they interact and that sort of southern lifestyle. Um, but no, not really. I mean, I think it was more. It wasn't autobiographical in that sense. It was sort of autobiographical in the sense of what might have been true. I know his when he went to come out to mother, his mother said, "Well, I blame your father because I think he was that way too." And his head, his Alan Paul's head just went, "What?" And there had been a story about a friend of his father's, a kid who had drowned in a lake, and when he died, Alan's father accompanied the body on a train back to the hometown. So he was like, "Well, I wonder if that could have been." Of course, his father was dead at this point, so he couldn't ask him about it. But he doesn't know that. But it sort of gave him the germ of an idea, and 30 years later, he Uncle Frank poured out
Yeah.
of him.
And you, of course, play Frank. And the stories it takes place in the 70s. He is a very kind of traumatized character in a lot of ways. He's not out to his family despite being an adult. And I love watching the relationship you created with Wally, played by Peter McDeesey, because they're so kind of opposite in a way, and you really feel that these people are tied together. What was it like working with him, and how did you create that chemistry together?
I don't really know. He what it's a really fine performance because Peter McDeesey is very taciturn and very intense and Wally is just this sort of shining positivity the whole
Yeah.
time. And Peter is not so much that. He is very much like he's intense and he really wants to understand things and he wants to get to grip with it and so it was really wonderful watching him sort of create Wally and also yield to the fact that he had to be this just endlessly positive um, uh, figure. Because he is, of course, also not out to his family, but he doesn't seem quite as trapped by um,
Mhm.
that decision. And yeah, and as far as our relationship together, uh, I just felt really comfortable. I felt really comfortable with him and around him, and
Mhm.
so it felt very easy to. We made each other laugh, you know.
Yeah. I think one of the movie spans so much different kinds of emotion. It's humorous, it's dramatic, and I think for me, one of the most brutal moments is, well, right after the will reading, where Frank is really outed to his family in a heart-wrenching way. There's the scene with you and Peter in the hotel room where you completely lash out at him, and as the audience, you're screaming, "No, don't do this," because it's the person you love. And he even throws him to the ground and hits him and is cursing at him. What was that moment like to film?
Well, it was really frightening. It was frightening because uh, we had kind of we had spent the day shooting other things, and we had a very limited time with Sophia, who is in the scene and needs to be in the scene because she has to witness the scene, and she was a minor at the time, so she had a curfew. We kind of shot that scene in about 40 minutes, which I know that doesn't really. It seems like doable, but it's these things take a very long time to shoot, especially when uh, there are fights involved and things like that. So mostly I just remember feeling really frustrated. And maybe that was able to use that in the scene because I was very frustrated that we had sort of let the day run away from us. And here we were with our backs up against the wall, knowing that we had to leave that location and we weren't going to be able to come back and shoot it. But
And
it was not a pleasant experience.
well, as is appropriate for that scene, it's not a pleasant moment. What struck me too is that Frank really experiences kind of like for most gay people or queer people, sort of the greatest fear and their greatest hope towards the end of that movie of being outed and not being accepted, but then also experiences acceptance ultimately by his family in a quick just period of time. And how do you think he sort of grows or changes the most by the end of that movie?
Well, I think you've 100% hit the nail on the head. He's living at a time where it's very difficult for him to be out anywhere, but he's chosen to live in New York City, and he is living an out um, life, and but not back down south, and that causes this these two worlds that he has to keep separate. He has to keep them separate in his head. And as he starts heading south to see his family for the funeral, it becomes increasingly more difficult. And in this sort of rather quiet um, uh, man, is is begins to who's very much in control of himself, begins to lose control and starts to, of course, self-medicate, uh, and it all leads to this sort of this eruption of the scene you were previously talking about,
Mhm.
where he is outed at the will reading and loses control of the situation. He loses control of his narrative and he is terrified. And then um, it leads to real resolution. And there are some people in his family who are unable to accept him, and some people who are able to accept him. But the most important thing, I think, because this is when when Alan and I were discussing what the film is and who is it for, and Alan said this very simple and I think really beautiful thing, which is that this movie is for anybody who has ever struggled to live their life authentically. And that was very moving to me because my father had, um, and and I thought that was a really a beautiful, simple message. And to have, the other thing Alan really, really wanted to do was have a gay couple that live happily ever after in a movie, which doesn't happen as regularly as it should.
Yeah, it was great to see their resolution. And I would be remiss if I didn't also bring up Sophia Lillis, who you mentioned before, because your dynamic between you two, so much of it is a road trip movie featuring you two. And it's really interesting to watch. I had previously talked to her about he forms a mentorship to Beth, but then at the end, she kind of turns the tables on him and is the one who's able to pull him up.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that dynamic was for you.
The she's an incredibly self-contained, quiet human being, and really watchful, and you feel she's got so much for nothing, Sophia. The camera loves her, and she is able to tell stories without language, without dialogue, and that is the stuff of movies. And she is a real star, but moreover, she is a great actor who is only going to go from strength to strength, in my opinion. So just watching her, because she's got a long time to wait before in that movie. She's just watching and she's watching
Yeah.
and she's watching before she is able to really explode. And she's wonderful. She was wonderful to watch. I really admire her.
Well, you have another great co-star this year in Elizabeth Olsen in WandaVision, and the two of you, the whole conceit of that show is that Wanda's created this area where each episode explores a different sitcom reality, and it just looked like, I mean, the two of you we've seen from the Avengers movies play beautifully off one another, but it just looks like in this you just had a blast exploring these sitcom uh, eras. What was it fun to go back to and do that in front of a live audience too?
It was it was amazing. It was such an explosion of creativity. Uh, I loved every minute of making it. We we shot the first episode in, well, a day and a half. We shot it in front of a live studio audience, and then we came in and shot specials. It was bonkers. It was like endlessly new experiences, which um, get, well, they get less as you have worked in the business for a long time, and so that was really amazing. And we also felt, I think I felt less pressure because we weren't going to come out first. There was going to be Falcon Winter Soldier, and then we were going to be this kooky. We always expected to be this sort of the kooky cousin, the kooky Marvel cousin, and we just thought, well, we're an experiment, and we're going to do this. We're going to do this show, and who knows if it will work. But the concept was so bold, I thought, so groundbreaking in how it from Jack Schaefer and also Kevin Feige and the whole team, and Matt Shackman, because they were all together creating this thing, and Marvel really bring you on early, bring the actors on early for input, and you just felt like this team having the best fun, creating this very groundbreaking thing, because usually television makes a contract with the audience. This is a thriller, this is a comedy, this is and Jack just was like, shh. She just tore it and threw it out the window, and I made this thing that I will for the rest of my days be very proud to have been a part of, and very grateful to have been a part of, because I had some, and I shouldn't speak for Lizzie, but I'm going to. We had so much fun making that show.
Yeah. Could you, because it does incorporate, there's so many layers to this show. It's a sitcom, it's a superhero show, it explores grief, it's everything. Could you envision what it was going to look like when it was first brought to you?
Yes, I could, because when Kevin pitched it, he sort of pitched the idea of doing these starting in half an hour black and white comedies, where things started to feel a little odd, and then later on in the episodes, canned laughter would be in inappropriate places. So he had a sort of idea, and then but that was before it was honed. But I could picture that, because I was a big fan of shows like Bewitched and the Dick Van Dyke Show, which were in my childhood living in England. There were, well, for most of my life, there were 3 channels, and then there was a 4th, which was like, whoa, Channel 4! You couldn't believe it. Well, but on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings after church and before sports came on, there were reruns of American sitcoms, and I had fallen in love
Yeah.
with all of those.
Yeah. And, you know, for all the sitcom nature, there is one scene that you had that really resonated with me, and I know resonated with many of the fans, which is when Vision is comforting Wanda in a flashback, and you have that great line saying, "But what is grief if not love persevering?" That I
Yeah.
think stabbed a knife into everyone's heart and made us all really think. And did you expect it to also be able to so like deftly tackle deep topics like that?
No, but I know we spent a lot of time reworking that scene with the writer of the episode and the head writer Jack Schaefer, and um, we sat and we talked, and I said I didn't think, I thought that what's great is it's coming from an ingenue robot, so it's not going to feel preachy. And I really want it to be. I would love him to flip the script and say, but it can't all be grief. Can't just all be pain. It has to be something else as well, because otherwise, what's the reason? It must have a reason, and sort of searching for it and finding it in this sort of quite naive way. And we pinpointed that in the end we were able to hone down that it was that line, and then it was a lot of people working on that one line, and in the end, it was, I think, Jack Schaefer's assistant who said persevering, and we all went, "Ah, that's it." So we had been building it for the, and I love that. I love that. It was, it's that is a sort of, that is a sort of, it was, the whole show was like that one moment of no ego, collaboration, and joy.
Absolutely. It was a great moment. And I know I have to let you go shortly, so I do want to sort of ask about this show. I think more than any other Marvel project, which is saying a lot, had people just picking apart and dissecting things line by line, trying to come up with theories over what was going to happen next, how it would connect to other projects. I know I was one of them. I will admit it. But is that aspect of it fun for you, or is it just incredibly difficult and aggravating trying to keep your tongue, like bite your tongue for this whole time?
Yeah, it's really hard to. I mean, I'm used to it because it's been a long time at Marvel, but it's really hard to talk about things without talking about them.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was hard. I remember I was making the Da Vinci Code, and I was about to get on. We did all the press on a train, going to Cannes, and as I walked onto the train, the lawyer said, "So you can't mention albinism, you can't mention the Catholic faith, and you can't mention that you're an assassin." And I went, "Wait, what am I going to talk about?" But I thought that was hard. But not being able to talk at all and still conducting interviews is difficult. So it's nice to be able to talk about it now, that it's out there. And I loved all the fan involvement. But it is funny because you do notice that some people, they'll come up with a theory and they'll say their theory. And if it's, if they're correct, they're like, "Well, that was boring." And then if, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. And then if they're wrong, and they're like, "It should have been my way." So,
A sort of can't win scenario in that one, but I think everyone appreciated it nonetheless, whatever theories came true or not. So thank you so much, Paul, for sitting with me. Everyone who's watching, make sure you subscribe to Gold Derby. Keep in touch with us throughout the season. And Paul, thank you once again.
lovely talking to you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.